right, hello, Flight Sim community. This is Beast, and we're back on the ground in Donalsonville, Georgia, for our one stop in Georgia as we proceed a little bit further to the south and east, this time heading over to Tallahassee. If you notice there on my left wing, you can see it, and there's one on the right as well. We have a set of tip tanks, which means we've changed versions of the Bonanza. Now we are in the turbocharged or the turbo normalized version of the Beach Bonanza from Black Square. So we're going to go ahead and give this one a go. As we take off out of here, we'll take a little peek into some of the systems. It should be similar in performance to the 210 from Coronado, the 210T that I have. So I kind of look forward to seeing exactly how that works. And we might be in this one for the remainder of our trip down towards Florida, as it will, or at least it should, enable us to cover a little bit more ground in a little bit short of time, which is kind of what I would like to do. So, next up, let's see if we can start it. So battery's going to come on, alternator's off, beacon on, we can turn on our nav lights as well. Let's go ahead and prime it. Started nice and easy. So I did take a look through the starting procedures for this airplane. I went ahead and finally opened up the manual just a little bit to see kind of what it said. It recommended taking the throttle all the way to full forward. Normally, when I was used to starting the fuel-injected airplanes that I've flown, it was a bare movement on the throttle, see fuel flow kind of start to come up. Once you saw movement in the fuel flow, you would kind of pull it back to idle and then go ahead and start the airplane. That started very easy. I've played around with starting this airplane, this one and the other Bonanza, a few times, and that was the easiest start I've ever had. So apparently they want you to go full throttle on that, put in a lot more fuel than I normally like to do in small airplanes because you run the real risk of having hard starts and flooded engines. The smallest amount of fuel possible. You know, it's 14 to 1 when it comes to air. That's what you want. You want lots of air, itty bitty bits of fuel. In the way they kind of tell you to do it, lots of fuel. So anyway, not neither here nor there. It's just kind of the way they expect it to happen. And yeah, so like I said, we're going to take off out of here. We're going to go over to Tallahassee. I'll set that up here in the GPS. And we'll get going. I did play around in the airplane the other day. So I originally tried to make this video. Let's see, 29. I think we're at 160 feet here, and I'll keep talking about this. So that'll be approximately 2989. Yeah, I did try to make this video originally yesterday. So I had started playing around with it a little bit, and then I had family come home, so I was like, well, that's not going to be the time for this, so I decided not to. And so yeah, so I did not finish making the video. Like I said, I just kind of initially started it. But what was kind of cool is I did spend a little bit of time flying the airplane around in the mountains out in Colorado. And I do believe that I will be, not even I do believe, I know for a fact I am going to be making an instrument flying video with this airplane. Did a bunch of stuff out there, shot an approach, flew an arc, did a couple of VOR navigations, turned off the GPS altogether, flew it just based off of the nav aids and the HSI. Everything worked great except for I was having some issues with the autopilot and actually coupling to the nav source. I think that has to do with using the aftermarket software that they're using for this KLN90B. When I kind of read through, actually we'll talk about this stuff en route. But it seems like that might be part of the problem. So I will be kind of curious to see if we try something different in there, if that happens to change what the experience is. So we'll see what happens with that. But otherwise, let's get on out of here. See if we can make this tight right-hand turn. There's another taxiway behind us. That should help get us out of the way. Cowl flaps are open. So we still have the previous leg in here. We'll have to update this one. We're not going to 17 Juliet. That's actually a couple legs ago. So we're at 17 Juliet, which is the most recent flight that we've done. But we're going to go over to Tallahassee. So let's put in Tallahassee, TLH, Tango Lima Hotel. Should be a nice, easy flight. I don't believe, I think it's like 20 minutes, maybe a little bit less than that. 148 will be the bearing to get over there. We'll put that in. And in fact, you know, there's a VOR that's kind of nearby Tallahassee. I think Seminole VOR is just north of there. Maybe we'll take off and just go towards Seminole. But we've got that course in already. We'll just put that there for now. I'll swap the frequencies when we get airborne. And we'll go from there. But all the numbers are looking pretty good. You can see that we have fuel in our tip tanks here. So I did have a little issue when I played around with this airplane the other day. In that the fuel in the tip tanks, it was burning fuel out of the tip tanks when flying as opposed to burning it out of the main tanks, which this is where the fuel should be getting burned from. The tip tanks should only be getting used to refuel those main tanks. You don't burn fuel out of the tips. And the manual even says as much, but for whatever reason, the fuel was coming out of the tip tanks over here as opposed to the main tanks over here. So I'm not quite sure what that was all about. We'll take a look at it. I'm trying to pump fuel right now from the tip tanks into the main tank, so we should watch these go up while these go down. But we'll see what happens. Right now, I think we're set up to burn out of the left tank, despite the fact that it shows that it's off down there. Haven't been able to get that one quite figured out yet either. So I'm going to say, while the airplane's got a ton of stuff to it, there's a lot of detail. Yeah, it looks like my tip tanks are decreasing right now, which is what I would expect. So that's good. I'm happy about that. Yeah, there's a lot of detail. What I'm just not thrilled about is it seems like it has some, I don't want to say some kinks, but there are some issues that don't seem to be making a ton of sense. So anyway, that said, let's get going. Power's coming in. A little bit of overboost there. I should have been a little bit more careful. I've got some right crosswind correction in because we do have a pretty decent crosswind coming from the right. Got a positive climb, gears coming up. I have not noticed as of this time any type of wear and tear on the engine. I know we're operating in it basically within the specs the entire time, which is kind of what I hope to do. I was a little bit aggressive with that power. The first time I tried flying this thing, I went ahead and I was very careful with the power addition. That time I just kind of firewalled it because it doesn't seem like it overboosts nearly that much. But you should be careful when you're dealing with turbocharged airplanes to increase power pretty linearly, especially when you start getting close to the end, because there will be a delay in how long it takes for the wastegate to open to maintain your maximum engine boost. You can run the risk of overboosting engines. Our Senecas that we had one, I guess. So our Seneca 2 had a real habit of people kind of overboosting it, and then next thing you know, you would have an airplane that was pooling smoke from a mixture that went crazy levels of rich before the power would come back. So if you out accelerated the wastegate, you could have problems with it. And then you end up with things like fouled spark plugs and more maintenance that has to get done. Alright, so we're headed over to Tallahassee now. Like I said, I think 17.5 is the frequency for Seminole. We'll put that in. And just going to see where we're at. Comms on. 17.5. Let's swap this to nav. Let's listen to it, see where we're at. That course is about dead even. Let's go on up to like 5,500 feet. And once we get up there, we'll go ahead, we'll pull the power back to cruise settings and let it go. The airplane flies phenomenally. The real reason that I took it out to Colorado yesterday to fly around was to see just how the aircraft performed with the turbo normalizing. And leaving out a Telluride, the airplane was a dream. It was still climbing at 2,000 feet per minute. No noticeable loss in power. Took it up to 20,000 feet, took it up to 25,000 feet, took it up to 30,000 feet. Would not recommend that. But it flew fine, took forever to climb past 25. Obviously, it was not able to maintain sea level pressure once you got up that high. But, yeah, I mean, it flew marvelously. Alright, that seems to be working just fine. Go ahead and push the nose over, level ourselves off, let the airplane accelerate a little bit. See if I can get some trim going. Those tip tanks are looking empty, and our main tanks are looking more full, so that's a plus. I like that. Not sure what was going on yesterday when the tip tanks were burning down and our main tanks were just sitting right where they were at. That was kind of funky, but... and I did not have the transfers on. Also, I don't see... And that could be a result of the lights, because they could be hooked up with the panel lights, but they should show up as green when the transfer's engaged, and then they should automatically shut off once the tanks reach 0. So that's a little odd, but yeah, we'll kind of see what goes on with that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pull my engine back to about 25. I'll run 25 squared with our manifold and RPMs both set to even. So we have a little bit of wind coming out of the south, so we're going to go ahead and turn a little bit more in that direction. But yeah, just a great flying airplane. Unless I stop paying attention to it, it flies pretty well, straight and level. A little bit of right trim, right aileron trim seems to be necessary to keep it from turning to the left. Otherwise, it's just a solid flying airplane, and gets pretty easy for even almost hands-off flying. So I like that. It's good to have an airplane that you can fly easily without the use of the autopilot, but the autopilot is there in case you need it, obviously. So that's, you know, it's kind of a win-win. Here, I'll just turn the autopilot on real quick. See if I can get this thing to maintain altitude. It's angry. It is trying to do a descent. Let's turn that off real quick. Come back up there. There's altitude capture. That shows good. Alt hold. And let's turn you back on again. Autopilot's on. Maybe I just wasn't kind enough to it, but it was trying to descend. Alright, now it will follow the heading. I've played with that quite a bit. I'm going to go ahead and turn the heading mode over here just a little bit to the right. And we'll re-engage the nav. I'm going to be curious to see, because like I said, obviously we have nav set up here, which is what's controlling what gets displayed on your HSI. So it should work, you know, in all functions. It should work right here. But I've had issues with it not. Seems like it's following right now. Let's see. And it seems like it's leveling off. I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, cool. It appears to be following my nav source. So whatever strange issues I was having yesterday, I did get an error message on my GPS, so maybe the problem wasn't the GPS itself, but was the GPS sending a signal that was erroneous and was causing confusion between the autopilot system. So inside of the manual, one of the things that I did read was, because of all the different autopilots that they have incorporated with the airplane, you run this risk of having, let me rephrase, my words got ahead of me. Because of all the different GPS systems that you have in the airplane and the ability to swap them, and a lot of these are aftermarket GPSs, of course, so whether that be just having a regular radio stack there, the 530, the 750 is also an option. Of course, you have the 430, 650 as backups, the 90B, which is what I have in here right now. Because you can change all of these, the autopilot has to be able to function with all of them as well. And that difference between where it functions and where it doesn't is what seems to cause the problem. So, that said, I think that's what's causing, I don't want to say the issue, but that would make a lot of sense as to why we have an issue. So, we'll see. We'll play with it and kind of figure that out as we kind of move forward. But the airplane seems to be flying fine. You also have this RNAV box right here. If you see the switch here for the HSI source, you can switch to RNAV, which then is using this RNAV receiver here, this old school RNAV receiver right here, which has waypoints in here that you can actually put on and build points in space from where you're at to navigate point to point. Really cool 80s technology, but it works, and there's an entire chapter on it. I've never used one in real life. There's an entire chapter on it inside of the book. A couple of things I did notice. So yesterday when I was flying around Colorado, I was just using the regular weather that was there. The icing built up really good on the airplane as far as the windshield goes. You can de-ice the windshield by using the defroster. It's not really de-icing. Obviously, if you had real life and you had actual icing built up on the windshield, the defroster may or may not melt the ice. Even Skyhawks have a defroster, but I know for a fact that with ice buildup on the window, you might, if you're lucky, get a couple inches of clear air or clear windscreen to see out of. It doesn't have real de-icing. This airplane does have prop de-icing and, of course, pitot heat, but that's it. There's no true icing capability for the airplane itself. I will say real quick, I'm just going to say this. I'm noticing that we're flying about a dot off on our HSI. So while it's clearly doing something, it's not clearly doing what I would have expected. There's no real reason for that needle to not be centered up. So, let's see. Let's turn this one off. I don't really want that. No change or effect here. Nav. No, that doesn't change anything, right? No, changes nothing. Let's go ahead and turn 17.5 over here as well. You can even see the airport. It's out there right at 12 o'clock, about 1 o'clock, I guess, technically. 17.5. All right, cool. Now we've got an OBS over here as well. And that's centered up at about 135 degrees. This is funny. I sit here and I move and it's like, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and turn. But, so it is following it. It just wants to fly it at a half a dot or so to a full dot off center. Okie doke. Well, that's all known now, so we'll just stick with that. Let's see what the weather's doing down at Tallahassee. See if I can get a frequency for the ATIS here. But yeah, all things said, I do like 1945. I do like the airplane. It's pretty good. By the way, I would normally be putting this in 2, but I have no interest in talking to tower, so we're going to put it up here in 1 and just kind of see what happens. 1945. 1945.
Tallahassee Airport Information India, 1500 Zulu. Wind 275 at 11. Visibility 10. Sky condition clear. Temperature 27. Dew point 14. Altimeter 298 ILS runway 27 in use. Landing and departing runway 27. VFR aircraft say direction of flight. All aircraft read back.
Alright, I'm going to go to heading mode.
Advise controller
Turn this thing to the south.
you have India.
India's current 2983. Winds are coming out of the west. About 11 knots is what I heard.
Wind 275 at 11. Visibility 10. Sky condition clear. Temperature 27. Dew point 14. Altimeter 298 ILS runway 27 in use. Landing and departing runway 27. VFR aircraft say direction of flight. All aircraft
And they're
will
landing
hold
27.
short
So we'll go on down,
instructions.
fly
Advise
midfield, and
controller on initial
then
contact you have Juliet.
work our way to a left downwind. Just make left downwind traffic for runway 27, land there. And that should be about it. I kind of preemptively pulled the power out with the intention of slowing down to go down, but I'm just going to go ahead and leave the power in, go fast, go down. And luckily this airplane, even though it can cruise at, you know, nearly 200 knots, oh, I guess about 170 knots, it kind of needs power in order to do that. So we're going to go ahead and leave the power up, let her come on down. Let's set it up. Let's do 2,000 feet a minute down, see where we're at. We'll pull power if we need to. Okay performance right now. Getting 50 frames per second looking out in that direction. 48 looking straight ahead. A lot of trees down here. You know, that might be affecting some of that. You know, I was getting really decent performance out in Colorado for the majority of the time, getting around 50 frames per second, but there were a couple of times where it dropped down into the 30s. There was a lot of weather out there, though. I'm kind of surprised I'm not getting a little bit more than 47, you know, right now, truthfully. I think we might have a little bit of wind out here. Everything's kind of jumping around a bunch. Autopilot seems to be kind of struggling a bit. I'm going to turn this a little bit further right so that I can intercept that downwind a little easier. Well, 1,000 feet above, 1,000 feet above the ground. And obviously we would have been talking to Tower by now as we approach Tallahassee. Nice, easy flight. And like I said, this thing should be really great for helping us cover a lot of distance in Florida in kind of one fell swoop. I'm really kind of looking forward to that. So that's going to be the plan. This is going to be... So straight ahead of us, 12 o'clock, that is the FBO. I've flown into this airport a handful of times just with work. There's airline stuff off to the left, which looks pretty terrible, but that's what that is. That's the terminal building. FBO's right here in front of us. And, yeah, terminal looks a little tall. Just a bit tall. It seems like heights in this game have been one of the struggles that they've had. The heights of buildings, maybe the LiDAR data that they captured in order to design it and to build the things is just a little off, because you've got those hangars that we see at the small airports that are always gigantic. You've got terminal buildings like that. I mean, I know that these are all generic airports, of course, so they don't have them looking the way they would if you were to buy, you know, a tailored airfield. But the scale is always just a little off. A little drop in performance there, about 30 FPS. We came around there. Kind of interesting. Alright, auto's coming off. Got a tower at 12 o'clock. That shouldn't be much of a factor. Gear horn. We're below gear speed. We'll go ahead and drop our gear. Get rid of that flight director so we don't have any confusing information showing up. Underneath flap speed. Get approach flaps in. And I will say also, I do have the game running in God mode or God-like, whatever the heck they call it, inside a virtual desktop. And I'm only running TAA mode also on the controller. I do have foveated rendering on, but my anti-aliasing is only in TA, so this is about as good as it's going to get in terms of looks. But yeah, 45 frames per second. It's not bad. All right, landing flaps coming in. We've got a decent amount of wind. It's going to be coming right down the nose, so I anticipate a pretty slow approach speed. Over the ground, we're doing 77 knots, which isn't super slow. Power's coming out. Working out a little flare. And we're on the ground in Tallahassee, and that's all she wrote. Nice and easy. Go ahead and drop our cowl flaps back to open. I haven't touched the brakes yet. The airplane's just going to do its natural super duper slowdown. Yeah, see, so that building, I'm going to say, is about, I don't know, 3 stories too high. If it had been right down there, maybe 1 story above where the ramp is or where the gates are and the jet bridges, that might have been realistic. But where it's currently sitting is just wrong. They also do this random thing here in the game. You see that little CJ that's sitting over there? I mean, come on. Those should be down here at the FBO. Leave the jets for the airliners, the United, the Spirits. Let those guys stay there. So there's an Embraer 145 around the back as well. You know, those should be over on that side. Everything else should be down here around the corner. That's where you should see CJs and little Embraers and, you know, whatever else you can put in their longitudes, I guess, etc. But anyway, that's just me complaining about stuff that, you know, shouldn't really be complained about, I guess. I'm just being nitpicky, but I want to be, and that's all that comes down to, like a crotchety old pilot. But besides the rant, welcome to Tallahassee. We'll keep on this journey. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you're enjoying the videos. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the journey. I'm enjoying this airplane. And if you guys have any questions, comments, please put it out there in the comments. Happy simming. We'll catch you next time on our next leg, and we'll see you later. Thanks for watching.